Hello and welcome to Roll for Adventure. I'm Bren.
I'm Bonnie.
And I'm Trent.
And today we're looking at Paranoia, a game set in a dystopian future ruled over by a mad computer.
Specifically, we'll be looking at Paranoia Troubleshooters, part of the 25th anniversary edition.
Paranoia has had some pretty heated edition wars, but Troubleshooters is probably the easiest way for people to jump into the classic Paranoia experience.
Originally designed in the 80s, Paranoia is the first real comedic RPG to be published. It's kind of like an indie game before indie games were really a thing.
Yeah, imagine a world designed by Kafka, Stalin, Orwell, Huxley, Sartre, and the Marx Brothers, and you'll start to get an idea of what it's like to be a character in the world of Paranoia.
You take on the role of one of the masses of drones who has suddenly been promoted to the red security clearance. Your new job is to troubleshoot any problems that the computer hands you, like fixing a robot that has broken down.
Unfortunately, as a lowly red clearance worker, you don't have permission to know what's wrong with the robot, what its original purpose was, or exactly how to fix it.
You could ask your superiors or the computer, but you'll usually be told you don't have clearance, unless you're really unlucky, and it's one of those situations where even asking is treason.
And treason is generally punished by liquidation. Life in the Alpha Complex is a nervous affair. Luckily, the computer produces each citizen in batches of 6 clones, so if you mess up, you have 5 more chances.
Your character will also be asked to be on the lookout for mutants, since they must be eradicated. There's just one problem with that. Due to problems in the cloning process, everyone in the Alpha Complex is a mutant. Just one more thing you have to keep a secret.
The real trick to the game is using all of your hidden powers and equipment without being caught out by the computer or another player.
Because at the end of every mission, you have to go through a debriefing session with the computer. In this session, you are encouraged to confess any treasonous behaviour that you have witnessed.
Suddenly, all the little things you thought you'd gotten away with come back to bite you.
Paranoia is definitely a game where you are working against the other players, but you have to find the balance of working together to achieve the goal versus turning in other players for the opportunity to get promoted.
Yeah, ranking the world of Paranoia has nothing to do with ability. It's a reflection of how much the computer trusts you.
1984 has nothing on Paranoia. If you're a fan of dark satire, this is definitely a game you'll enjoy.
Well, that's a quick breakdown of the core mechanics of Paranoia. After the break, we'll go into the strengths and weaknesses of the game and give you our overall impressions. Stick around, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Roll for Adventure. We're having a look at the game Paranoia. So guys, we've had a look at the core mechanics of the game, but how would you sum up the overall feel of Paranoia?
I'd sum it up in a 1980s sort of PvP dystopian future. It's weird. It's very hard to explain to someone that hasn't experienced it before. I'd let them look at something like Aeon Flux, the cartoon series released by MTV. Like, it's just so weird and out there.
It's got a very specific tone to it, doesn't it?
Yeah. Like, I don't think any other game replicates that tone.
What stands out for you, Bonnie?
Just the hate that you feel emanating from the other players of the GM.
It's a very strong player versus player game, isn't it?
Yeah, but you're still trying to achieve goals and trying to achieve, like, quests, I suppose, while still trying to get yourself further along, but what you're trying to achieve in the long term doesn't really make sense. It's hard to explain without having played it before.
So one thing I did love about this game is I felt that our GM did a fabulous job of playing the computer. You really brought it into a fantasy world where it was believable. I was there going, oh my goodness, the computer is onto me. Role-playing is such an important part of playing the computer.
Yeah, but you really have to make sure you keep what you're GMing and what you're computing separate, because there's certain mutant powers and certain secret societies that if the computer finds out about you're dead. You're totally done and there's no coming back from that. And I think that would be really hard if you weren't the right GM to do that. And I'm just thankful we had a really good GM who could keep those things separate.
Yeah, because the role of the computer is quite prescribed. You know, you're meant to be this assistive, helpful computer, But also really has this this paranoid feeling of, there's traitors in the mist and they must be screened out and so forth. So it's sort of hard to keep the GM knowledge separate to what the computer actually knows.
Yeah, I don't know what game you were playing. I found the computer incredibly infuriating that it's like, oh, I need to know this. Nope, you don't have the security level. Yep. But you told me to do this. But you can't tell me to do this? Yep. Ah!
Yeah, and there's also there's several suggestions within the game as well, like, just constantly going back and asking for security clearance and that kind of stuff. So it's like little components in the game that you can just throw in just to constantly frustrate your players, in a good way, of course. But like you ask for access again, and no, access denied, and just unexpected things as well, that the computer might have agreed to something before, but then either suffers from memory loss or something happens in the game, gets reprogrammed by another player, and then all bets are off again.
The world in this game is so different and so unique amongst all the other role-playing games out there. I don't really feel like there's one that we can really compare it to. Like, you can't really go, oh, Paranoia's like D&D in that the example breaks down. You can't compare it. Like, trying to get these really nebulous security clearances that you have literally no idea how you actually go about getting them. That you're like, oh, well, I have to get trusted by the computer to get a better life. But how do I do that? Like, how do I make the computer trust me more?
And Alpha Complex is really, it's an interesting thematic world because it's just, like you said, it is just such a unique concept, and there's almost no thought of, well, what's outside Alpha Complex? Like, that's how conditioned these clones are, that this is their world. This city, underground metropolis, is their world to them.
Unfortunately, because of this uniqueness of the theme, I feel like it's either going to appeal to some people and just definitely not appeal to others.
Yeah, it would be a very polarizing game. Like, you would either love this game or absolutely hate it. I don't think you could get a middle ground. I have a lot of problems with the system they use in this game. I love the world, and I love the flavor, and I love what you're trying to do. I feel like this game would be better served with different, fresher new mechanics. Like, there's a lot of indie games out there like Apocalypse World or Fate that I think would drive this game absolutely brilliantly, but
I'm not sure
the mechanics let the game down.
I'm not sure you'd get the same flavour though. Part of the mechanics of this game, it pits you against the other players, and the GM's out to get you. It's really it's built into the system.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at the connections mechanics in all of the Apocalypse World games, and I really could imagine using those connection mechanics to drive something like the secret societies. And you and me are on the same secret society, and we know that we have that connection, and we've got to hide that connection from the other players. And I think that would be really interesting to play it that way, rather than, I have a secret society and no one knows. I think that would really drive the game and make really interesting stories.
Now, while we were researching this game, we really found that the GM has a lot of work to do in this game. You're keeping a track of a lot of stuff, but you're also playing the NPC, the computer, in this game.
Yeah, but this is in addition to whether or not someone's a mutant, what their mutant power is, what their secret society is, what group they belong to. I mean, there's so much here for a GM to know and keep a track of. Yeah. At times, I wonder if it's a bit too much.
Yeah, like, you've really got to understand the backstory behind all these secret societies, like really research all these things. And the way they try and pitch the game is like, you're not going to have the perfect first game, so just sort of start with what you want, break the rules if you need to. But I think to get the tone across right, you've really got to just rote learn this entire game, which is a lot. That's an arduous task for the GM.
Yeah, I think a really interesting hack of this game could be making it two GMs. One person that runs the world and runs the things, and then having a designated GM for being the computer. And I think that would really drive this game really well, that that computer is then consistently that computer, and the world is you've just got someone there to just drive the world and keep everything ticking over. And I don't think either of those roles would be too much for one person. And I think there's a lot going on so that there's enough for each person to be doing.
That being said, the game is designed for the GM to run the computer, so we're trying as it stands as a game. One suggestion that they have is to really find your computer voice and have that sort of it could be anything. It could be like this melatoninous voice. Just stick with a computer voice. Stick with that when you're in the character of the computer.
Yeah, I think I'd really enjoy running this game, but running it like those old word processor games, the parser, and just going, someone saying some metaphorical thing and just going, does not compute, and just having that really frustrate the players a little bit, that it's like, oh, I am talking to a computer that can only understand computer things.
Well, I don't feel you need two GMs. I'm pretty sure if you played in an ongoing game, once the players themselves caught on to the rules would cease to be such an issue, and it would just be the GM playing the character of the computer.
I wonder if you could really drive this game as maybe a GM-less game, and have like everyone run this game like narratively, that everyone sort of steps up and takes a bit of narrative control, and one player play the computer as their character. And so everyone's a character in this game, and there's really no GM.
I don't think that would change anything, because the computer's still going to have the most authority, and that's the role of the GM. So.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. So as the GM, you're keeping track of like the pervasity points, and you're keeping track of all these things that are definitely behind the scenes. And so you still need that referee adjudicating those decisions. So what I really found interesting with this game is the perversity point mechanics. So like you've got this out-of-game currency that you're sort of using between players and so forth to affect how other players' roles work, either to assist them or to their detriment.
It's still limited within the system. You can really only plus or minus a roll by 5. So you can spend your points to add or minus the roll, but there's still a limit within the system.
Yeah, we had a really good moment in one of our research games where a character was trying to do something in the game, and one of the other players said, "Oh, I'll assist you," and then sort of gave a note, and someone else said, "Oh, I'll assist you too." But the secret notes being passed to the GM were actually against that particular player. So it's sort of a very interesting way of running this game.
With the release of the 25th anniversary edition, we really concentrated on playing troubleshooters. Those really low-level, low-power sort of situations.
Red-level clearance.
Yeah, but there are alternate versions you can play. There's a version called Internal Security, where you play blue-level internal security, and you've really got to make sure that the plebs stay in their place.
Yeah, and the third version being Paranoia High Programmers, in that you play ultraviolet clearance. So you're really at that top echelon of society, you most trusted people by the computer, but that really introduces a lot of politics to the play. Ultraviolet clearance really means that you're programming the computer. It allows you to reprogram its base programming. So you can really rewrite how the computer thinks or who it trusts and so forth for your own gains. So after the break, we'll be speaking to the designer of Paranoia Troubleshooters. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Roll for Adventure. Today we're looking at the game Paranoia. We're lucky enough to be joined by Gareth Ryder-Hanrahan, the designer of Paranoia Troubleshooters, all the way from Ireland. Welcome to the show, Gareth.
Hello, thank you for having me on.
So, how did the 25th anniversary edition come about?
Well, obviously, impetus one was it was 25 years since the first edition of Paranoia, and we sort of went, we should probably mark that. Impetus two was, to be honest, nakedly commercial. Paranoia the core books have always sold very, 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 very well. Adventures and supplements, though, tend to sell like considerably less. Like normally you get a sort of a ratio of about 70% or so for the core book to supplement. With Paranoia, lots of people buy the core book. No one was buying adventures or supplements. So having more core books out there was a sound financial decision, which sounds horribly manipulative, but it's just a question that, Paranoia is a one-joke game, but it's a very, very funny joke. So we're looking for ways to repackage that joke. And Impetus 3 was that I had ideas for doing 2 other core books, the Internal Security and High Programmers, which go along with the Troubleshooters edition. And that was an excuse to get them done. So yeah, and we had the fantastic XP edition done by Alan Varney, and it was just a question of basically touching that up. Fixing is possibly a egotistical way of putting it, but sort of tweaking it slightly, which we'll get onto in a sec.
So how did you approach updating the systems of XP?
I've always felt that when you're doing the new edition of a game, it's very much a question of be a custodian of it as opposed to going to charge it and change it radically. That can work too, but with XP, I felt that it was a very, very solid edition to begin with, and we didn't want to make that many changes. So the big changes were basically tweaking the treason system. Alan had designed this lovely treason system based off the damage system, which was very elegant, very classy, very well suited for classic games or for straight games, but it lacked the emotional joy of being able to go to a player, here is a treason point, and basically saying you have sinned against the computer, basically. Basically, treason points are fun, and that's even acknowledged in the XP text that it's just something that feels right for basically the GM. You want to censor a player on the spot with a nice, simple, you are rap on the nose. The other thing I did was cut down on the emphasis on service firms. XP pushed Paranoia towards being more of a satire of capitalism than it was, and gave people jobs and sort of not realistic but sort of detailed approach to Alpha Complex. And in playing, we'd found that a lot of the service firm stuff, while funny, was distracting from the actual fun of the game. That basically the scenarios spending too much time talking about service firms and not enough time on actual missions, which are the sort of meat of the game. So we didn't take those out. We just sort of dropped the emphasis on them, and a lot of them got moved to the High Programmers book where they were a better fit.
What were your main design goals?
Basically, just keeping the game fun, which is a very sort of non-answer, but Paranoia is what's the best way to put this? Paranoia is an experience. It is not so much a game as a state of mind. It's all about getting the GM into a position where their giant hand can move inside the camera. Sorry, getting GM into a position where they can turn the players against each other and screw the players over, and the players are laughing about it and asking for more. So with my design goal was basically to streamline things as much as possible to maneuver GM and player into that mindset. So a lot of it was basically simplifying bits of the game that I felt were a bit overly complicated or irrelevant to that experience.
So how would you sum up Paranoia for someone who's new to role-playing?
Paranoia is a game set in a utopian complex where everything is perfect, where everyone is happy all the time, where your friend, the computer, guides, encourages, nurtures you in your happy day-to-day life as a citizen. It's a post-scarcity utopian society where everything is just great. Almost everything. There are communists and muters and traitors and other horrible bad things, and they must be shot. As a troubleshooter, your job is to shoot them. This is a fun job, completely safe. Yeah, if someone's used to role-playing, you lie to them when they're first playing Paranoia. You lure them in with promises of, like, tea and cake and bouncy bubble beverage and happy fun teamwork. And then you hopefully have, say 5 grizzled bloody veterans of Paranoia who will tear them apart. And they'll learn. For new GMs of the game, Paranoia is a comedic role-playing game based on backstabbing in this decaying utopia, where the aim is to turn the players against each other in an entertaining fashion and basically make them dance for your amusement.
There are a lot of different skills for players to choose from, but a lot of them seem to be very specific to certain situations. Do you think the game could benefit from trimming down the skill list?
The reason the skills are so specific is to basically ensure the players don't have them when they need them. It's basically there to be horrible to the players. It's like, the GM can go, right, which of you has the warbot maintenance skill? And the players look at each other and go, no. Fine, who's going to default their crappy hardware skill? And six hands are tentatively raised. The skills are there absolutely just taunt the players with the feeling that, if only I had chosen differently, I would have exactly what I need, but I don't, so I've got to improvise, I've got to lie, I've got to get someone else to do it. You can also set up a situation where one player has a skill that's going to be very useful, like, you're being sent in to repair a damaged reactor, and one player has reactor maintenance. Now, the other players might all want to kill that character, but they're going, right, we have to keep him alive until he fixes the nuclear reactor. My secret society has ordered me to kill him. I've got this other plot that wants me to kill him, but I need to keep him alive just until he uses that skill. Once he rolls that dice, I can zap him in the back. The skills aren't there to roll to complete things. They're there to add flavor and to taunt the players with possibilities that they'll never possess.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Gareth. We really appreciate it.
Not at all. It's been lovely. And stay alert, trust no one, and keep your laser handy.
Well, that's about it for this week. All that's left is to give our final ratings. To keep with our theme, we use a dice rating system on Roll for Adventure, ranging from a D4 to a D20. So Bonnie, what are you going to give Paranoia Troubleshooters?
While I think Paranoia has sound good mechanics, I can't stand any kind of theme where you're constantly put in lose-lose situations. That's not my style at all.
You're pitting players against each other.
Not just against each other, but you're put in situations where there's no way to win unless you break the rules, and I hate that. So I'm giving it a D6.
And Trent?
I love the setting. I love the idea of the game. I just have a lot of problems with the mechanics of this game. So if I was to just rate the world, it would easily be a D12. But the mechanics are just D8 at best. So I'm going to give it a D10 overall.
And for me, I found as the GM that there was really a lot of prep work in this game, and to sort of set that tone is something really specific. So it's a lot of work, but I feel it does pay off in the end. I'm giving it a D10. You can find out more about Paranoia on our website, rollforadventure.com.au. While you're there, you can see a video of this week's show, as well as exclusive web clips, and the full version of our interview with Gareth. Well, next week we'll be trying to take over the world as we check out Project Ninja Panda Taco. See you then.